All right, today we're going to be doing an oil change on a 2019 Hyundai Tucson. This has the 2.4 liter four-cylinder engine in it, and I'm just going to give you guys a quick run through of how to change your oil. Now, before we do this, a common question that I get from friends that don't change their own oil is, why bother? Take it to a quick lube place, let them do it for 30 bucks or whatever it costs these days. I don't like that because I've heard enough horror stories, and I know people that have had issues with things like oil filters not being tightened all the way, or just attempts at upselling on things that aren't needed. And to me, this is a good way to get under your car and see what's wrong. This is one of the first things I learned how to do working on a car. You don't save a ton of money unless you're using full synthetic, which we are. So we're going to save some money on that. But it's just a good way to get to know your car and to spend some time under there and start looking for things that could be wrong, especially as your car gets into higher mileage. This car has 125,000 miles, and so I like to get under it as much as I can. And in addition to changing the oil on this, we're also going to rotate the tires, but that's going to be in a separate video, so keep an eye out for that. So let me show you guys what we need to change the oil on this car. All right, a couple of basics. We need some sort of drain pan. I like this style because you can open up this plug, fill it up, and then wherever you dispose of your oil, whether it be an auto parts store or a recycling center, you can dump it straight into that. For this car, it calls for 5W20. I'm using the full synthetic high mileage from O'Reilly. I find this to be a really good value. Never gotten to test it or anything. It's just what I use. It's 30 bucks or something. And then the 51334 XP filter from Wix is what I've always used. And the XP is just the extended performance one. It costs a couple bucks more, but that's what I use. We're going to need a funnel for putting the oil back in the car. We're going to need a 10 millimeter socket. Doesn't matter what drive. I'm going to cheat and I'm going to put it on this electric ratchet. You can also use more like an impact driver. This is what I used before I had the ratchet. And then we're also going to need some sort of oil filter wrench. I like this style. I think this works pretty well. For this car, we need an extension and a ratchet for that. And then we're also going to need a crush washer. This is for the drain plug, if I can get to focus. This crush washer will ensure the drain plug doesn't leak, so we'll come back to that. And then, in addition to all of that, we've got a floor jack and a jack stand. We're using the Safe Jack stand today. I really like these because you can put it on top of the jack. So let's talk about jacking this thing up. We only need to jack up one side in order to do this. And we're going to come under here and we're going to find the pinch weld. This pinch weld right here is where it says to jack. And it says to do it kind of in this open area here. The problem with most cars is that there's not enough room to put a floor jack and also a jack stand. And so some people will go further back and do it back here, but you're really not supposed to. So I've never been a fan of jacking up cars like this until I discovered the Safe Jack. And let me show you how this works quick. All right, this is going to seem like an ad a little bit. I paid full price for these. I make no money off of this. I just think this is a really smart product. So essentially what this is kind of an upside down U shape, and you can extend these legs and the vehicle will sit on this little plate here, and they have different plates. So if you have like a frame rail or something that you want to do it with, you can do it on that. I use this pinch weld plate because it fits this car. So all you have to do is you pull these pins out, and then the sides come off, and then you set this on your jack, just the top part. You set this on your jack. It's got a plate on the bottom for the jack, and then you jack it up like you normally would, and then you add the legs back in, extend them to the right length, and set the car down on it. Because I'm going under this, I don't want to take any chances about this falling. It could be life or death if this jack failed. And this is a Harbor Freight jack, but even if it was like a high-end professional jack, I'm still not going to trust a jack with my life to go underneath the car. I'm going to line this up with that pinch weld and just get a little bit of pressure on this. All right, so now that is on there nice and safe. I keep a little pressure on the jack just to give it two forms of strength here. And we're gonna go ahead and start doing our oil change. We've got the car jacked up just on the one side, which is totally fine. That's all we need. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna prepare the underneath to be able to actually drain the oil. All right, so on this car, and on many cars now, there are covers under here. You can see I spilled a little oil last time I did this, which is why that's like that. There is a cover under here, and there are a number of screws. So you can see there's one, there's a bunch back there. Basically this main cover here, we got to go through and got to take out each one of those screws. So that's a 10mm screw. I'm gonna grab a ratchet and we'll take all them out. Now this very back one here, I just loosened. I do not remove. I'm going to take this and I'm just going to spin it away and leave it attached. It makes it much easier to line everything up. All right, so before we do anything with draining oil, if we're using a pan like this, you're going to take out the cap there and you're going to pop this vent that allows air to escape, and you want to make sure this is tight. You also want to make sure you have enough room in there to actually accept however much oil you have. I have a little bit in here, but we should be good. So slide that under. We got some paper towels. One thing I forgot to mention is a 17mm wrench. We're going to take this under and let's take a look, and I'll show you where this drain plug is. All right, so on this car, this is going to be your oil pan. This is where it holds all your oil. And on this back side here, up here, you're going to see this little plug. That is our drain plug. A little shadow here, but there's our drain plug right there. You can see it's got a washer under it. That's that crush washer I talked about. And we're going to go ahead and remove this. But what we have to keep in mind is when we do that, the oil's not going to come perfectly straight down. It's actually going to kind of come out into the back because that plug is on the side. So we want to be careful that we place our pan so that it is underneath. So when it does fall straight down, it still lands in the pan. But when it shoots back, it also lands in the pan. So that's a pretty good spot there. This light is going to be a little hard to use now that we have this pan over here. But I'm going to come up here with our 17mm wrench, and I'm going to loosen that nut, or that drain plug. Hold on to this and just give it a little pull. That was on there pretty tight. Now, I'm going to take my hand with the glove, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to start loosening this. But as I do that, it's going to start dripping at some point. So I want to make sure I have my paper towel handy, but I'm going to use my index finger to apply pressure to keep the bolt in, and I'm going to use my middle finger and my thumb to loosen it. By keeping that pressure, I'm going to minimize the dripping, and I'm going to do this until I feel it click. The click will be the last thread right there. Click, click. So each turn I get a click. That means the last thread is in there, which means we're completely out. So I'm going to adjust this pan just a little real quick. Okay, so that last thread means it's totally out, and I'm going to quickly remove that bolt. And boom, there we go. You can see I got pretty minimal oil on my hands. And you can see how that oil is kind of coming out a little bit sideways. Now I could go ahead and just drop this plug, but I'm going to hold on to it and just set it on my paper towel and just make sure that as that oil comes straight down, it's going to still be in the pan, and it looks like it is. So we're going to let that drain, and we'll get this plug ready for the next step. So here's our plug. Okay, so here's our plug, and we've got a washer on here, and then we've got the plug. This is the crush washer that seals it. We're not going to reuse that. I've reused them before in a pinch, and they've been okay, but best to not. I just buy these in bulk online. And then here is our plug. So you can see this oil is not super dirty. A lot of times after a lot of driving, your oil will be black. My wife drives about 30,000 miles a year, so we do her oil every, let's see, I think we do every 5,000 miles on this. So it doesn't have a chance to get too dirty. So let's grab our new washer, we'll get it on here, and then we'll get ready to put this back in. One more thing I forgot to mention, you come up here, you're gonna wanna remove that, and that will help the oil flow a little bit better. All right, we got our drain bolt nice and clean, fresh crush washer on there. This is one of these things where you could find out the torque spec and do that. I've done this enough that I know about how tight to make it. I just get it just a little past snug. So this is ready to go back in, but we're gonna come down here, we're gonna look at our oil, and you can see that's almost done draining. It's starting to stutter a little bit. We're gonna wait till that's really just stuttering, and then we'll go ahead and put this back in. Now, while the oil's draining, let's take a look at our next step, which is gonna be this filter up here. So just to kind of put that in perspective, we're talking in front of the oil pan, we've got our filter here. Now, sometimes you can spin these off by hand. I have found usually that is not the case, even when I hand tighten them. So that's where we're gonna get our oil filter wrench. It's gonna grab around this, and we're going to loosen this. This is always a mess. It always drips, and it always seems to drip on top of this fabric, which is part of the reason this is so oily. I've not found a great way to do this other than to do it as quickly as possible. So once this oil has stopped draining, we'll come in here and we'll get this out. It looks like our oil is down to just a trickle. So we're gonna go ahead and call that good. And we're gonna get our plug, and we're just gonna come up in here and just stick it back in that hole and hand tighten it as quickly as possible so as not to get too much oil on ourselves. I'll just clean my hand off real quick, move this. And now before I do anything else, I'm gonna take our wrench and come up under here and get this tightened. It is just too easy to forget to do this if you wait too long. And so I just come in here, always do this by hand. All right, let's get our oil filter wrench and deal with this filter. All right, so before we go taking the old oil filter off, I always like to prep our new one. So we're gonna go ahead and open this up. And this has a protective thing on here. If you take this off, it will destroy your engine. We're gonna take that off, and we're gonna take our oil, and we're gonna crack it open. Literally all I'm gonna do is dip my finger in the fresh oil, and I'm just gonna run it around this O-ring on the filter, and that will help it seal it. That's all we need to do. That is prepped now to go on the engine. So we're gonna take this down with us. We're gonna take the old one off, quick as we can. We're gonna put the new one on, and then we're gonna wipe up the whole area, clean it up as best we can. One more thing, because it's gonna be really hard to show you how this works under there. This wrench, as you tighten the ratchet, tighten or loosen in this case the ratchet, it takes all these jaws and it closes them in around it. So we're gonna go up under this one, we're gonna grab this onto it, and then as I turn the ratchet, it will break it free. And once it's broken free, it'll come off by hand. The new one, we're just gonna spin on by hand. We're not gonna use a wrench at all to tighten this. Just as tight as we can get it by hand is plenty. I probably won't be able to show you this other than from up top, but that's what's going on under there. All right, so let me explain what just happened there, because I'm sure that wasn't super clear from up top. I went under with that oil filter wrench, I broke it loose, and then by hand, I went up and I spun it counterclockwise until it popped off. I did that as quick as I could, because when you start spinning, because it's upside down, oil starts running over the sides. And so I had the drain pan underneath to catch as much as I could. My hand got covered. Thankfully, it stayed on the glove. I flipped it upside down onto the drain pan to let it drain, because you can see there's still oil in it. So you put it on the drain pan, just let it empty out before we get rid of it. And then I quick grabbed a rag and just cleaned up as best as I could so I didn't drip. And then I went and got some fresh gloves. So After I did that, I took the new one, spin it on, got as tight as I could by hand. That's plenty tight enough. And then I went up with a paper towel and I just wiped around and got as much excess oil off as I could. And now we are good as far as underneath, except for putting our cover back on. Now, if you've never done this before, I would wait to put the cover back on until after you have changed your oil and you can make sure nothing is dripping, because the disadvantage of that cover, while it helps with road noise and prevents things from going up into your engine bay, it's really hard to tell if you have a leak, especially if you don't park in the same spot all the time. So leave that open, complete the rest of this process, and finish that at the end. I have done this a lot, so I'm gonna go ahead and put all those bolts in that we took out at the beginning. Before I do that, I'm gonna go under with a wrench, and I'm gonna double check that I got that drain plug all the way tight. I'm gonna double check that I got the oil filter on and tight by hand. All right, we've done the underneath part. We've got a new filter, we've drained our oil, and now we're gonna put in the fresh oil. This car takes a teeny tiny little bit over 5 quarts. I have always just done 5 quarts even, and it's been fine. Little trick when you're pouring oil, the tendency is to want to pour like this. That will make it come out even sooner than you think. If you pour it upside down like this, sometimes even a little bit of a side like this, you can get it a lot more horizontal before it goes in. You may have noticed this is a different funnel than what I showed you at the beginning of the video. That one does not quite make it down into here, so I grabbed this one instead. Doesn't really matter as long as it's clean. Last but not least, we're going to check our oil. We're going to clean the dipstick the first time it comes out, and then we're going to put it in again, and we're going to look at it, and we want to make sure that it's in between the 2 dots, which it is. Just a hair low right now, probably because the car is on an angle, but that is good enough. All right, where this gets a little weird is at this point it'd be good to turn the car on and see how everything is. It should be fine, but we're just going to turn it on and test it. I would rather take this off the jacks first, which is why I button up the bottom earlier in the process. If this is your first time doing it, it would probably be a good idea to lower it off the jacks, turn it on, make sure it's good, and then jack it up again and put that bottom on. I've already done that, so I'm gonna go ahead and lower the jacks, and then we'll go inside, we'll turn it on, and we'll reset the light inside. Everything sounded just fine, no warning lights. If you get a low oil pressure warning light, immediately turn the car off and see what's going on. But we got nothing like that. We're gonna check our oil one more time. We'll clean it off the first time again. This might be a little low because it just ran. Yeah, we're looking good. All right, so we are good to go. Oil cap is on tight. Then while we're in here, we'll check some of our other fluids, make sure everything's good. But that should be it. Let's take a look inside the car, what we need to do to turn off the notifications. So in this car, we've been getting this service in 500 miles. I just did it a little early because I've been late a couple times. So that's the notification we're getting. We're gonna go ahead and push this button. And we're gonna go over to the settings. And then we're gonna use these arrows here to go down. Service interval, we're gonna press OK. We've enabled the service interval, and we have, whoop, we lost it. We have this set for I think 5,000 miles. We're gonna go ahead and reset. I'm gonna hit OK, yes. Yep, so now it resets 5,000 miles, 182 days. So we're good to go there. And then we'll just go ahead back to our main screen. Now all we have to do is clean up our mess. All right, so now we're just left with all this. So the way I deal with all this might be different than how you deal with it near you. I take my oil filter, flip it upside down so it can't drain anymore. I put it back in the box, and that goes out in the trash. I'm not sure if you're supposed to do that, but that's how I do it. Camera doesn't want to focus. There we go. And then from here, I'm going to take all these dirty rags and I'm going to use them to wipe out my funnel and clean up this mess that I've made on here, because I now have to take this somewhere to get rid of all this oil. So usually I can just use the rags that I've already gotten started here and just really try to get the bulk of this oil either into the container or on the rags. And then quite honestly, what I do is I take them out back to my fire pit and I set them on fire. Because having oily rags in an enclosed container, especially a trash can, with other flammable things, puts you at a slight risk of spontaneous combustion. That is a serious thing that can happen, and I would rather just have controlled combustion. So that's what I do. So I'm going to put the camera down for this, but I'll wipe this out. Just get the last little bit. We're going to burn our rags, throw out our filter and our bottle, and then I will take this to a local recycling place to get rid of all this oil. So that's about it for the process of changing the oil on a 2019 Hyundai Tucson. Overall, not too difficult of a process. Jacking it up is really the hardest part of the whole thing. Just make sure that you have the right filter, the right oil, and that you know how to safely jack up the car. If you're not comfortable with that, it's always a good idea to find someone that's done it before, maybe that has some of the tools who can do it with you the first time. There are some little challenges that are going to come up here and there that you might not expect, and so having someone with a little bit of experience working on cars can be a huge asset for that sort of thing. Hopefully this helps if you decide to change your oil on your Hyundai Tucson. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment below, or if you feel like there's something I could have done better, I would love to hear it. Also, if this video is helpful to you, if you could subscribe to my channel and like the video, that would be a huge win for me, and I would really appreciate that. Thanks for following along, and check out our other videos here at Baker Makes It.